This is TWiT.
Up next is a really interesting story that I saw pop up, and a lighter version of Instagram. And we have, heard about Facebook experimenting with lighter versions of its platform and what exactly that means, what an app that is a light version means. And I'm excited to say that we're joined today by Meaghan Tobin of Rest of World to talk about this very story. So welcome to the show.
Hi, Mikah. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so happy to have you here. So let us begin by kind of talking about Instagram Lite and what exactly Instagram Lite is, and maybe who is the target for this app, especially because we've got a lot of listeners here in the United States, and maybe for them with their, 5Gs and their phones with, terabytes of storage, it's not so much for them. So who's this intended for?
Yeah, so Instagram Lite is basically a pared down version of Instagram. It's made for Android users with limited bandwidth and low memory phones. So people who are in markets where they're kind of paying, maybe they do a pay as you go SIM card or something like that for their data plan. And Instagram Lite takes up only 2 megabytes of space. Compared to 30 for the full-size app. So it's quite a bit smaller. And Facebook frames this like Instagram Lite can help users with limited capacity still feel connected to conversations on social media, especially during the isolation of the pandemic. And India is one of their target markets. And India actually does have pretty cheap data rates, largely thanks to Reliance Jio, which Facebook itself actually invested in. But Facebook is really trying as hard as it can to reach people who may not really be online yet or may not be online all the time or are new to using social media. And this is, like you mentioned, far from their first effort to do so. There are more than 400 million WhatsApp users in India, and this launch is also a way to get these users even further integrated into Facebook's app ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think that that's one of the things that you touch on in the piece is that we've seen a light version. I think it was tested in Mexico in years past, and the one something that's different about this one versus the one that was tested in Mexico and maybe elsewhere where Instagram Lite is available has something to do with Reels. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there, like you mentioned, there was a version of this app actually in 2018, and it was pulled from app stores worldwide last year in May. And Facebook said, we're revamping it. And the biggest change seems to be really that they've incorporated Reels into the version that's offered in India. But Instagram Lite before, was really popular in Mexico and the Philippines and Kenya, Peru. And none of these places got Reels in their versions of Instagram Lite. It's completely targeted at India. So it's pretty clearly directed, at filling the space left by TikTok when it was banned in India last year. But there's a huge caveat, which is that people in India, although if they're using Instagram Lite, although they can view Reels, they can't actually upload any of their own content. So it's kind of like a bait and switch, like Instagram Lite is a gateway to get more people hooked on using Reels. But if they want to do it themselves and contribute content, they still need the full-size version of the app.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And I guess then my question becomes, is that a typical method that social media companies or other app makers use to get folks to sort of clear up space or devote part of their download availability to get the full app? That's the interesting thing is, here I've got so much space on my phone that it's not a big deal for me to download some big app, and I've got multiple terabytes of cap on my bandwidth or whatever per month. So is the idea that you get the person to download it and get a little taste of it, and then they decide to devote a portion of their storage or what have you to actually downloading the full app? And is that a common practice with other app developers?
I think that is part of the idea. I mean, I definitely think like both things can be true. Facebook does want to reach users that have, low data capacity and give them a short form video app. But the thing is, there are actually tons of short form video apps available in India that have come up since the TikTok ban. So this is not like their only option. And with those apps, they might be able to contribute their own content. And there's some kind of similar parallels to Free Basics, which is a program that Facebook offered, also targeted at markets where people are kind of paying a lot of their own income for data or are using low bandwidth phones. Where, people were navigating through the product, navigating through the text-only version of Facebook that was available. If they wanted to access more content or access other sites, there would be this kind of little pop-up that was like, you're leaving this and now standard data rates are going to apply. And it's, that eats up your data pretty quickly. So I think it's a pretty common bargain that, people have faced in the past.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. So what do we know about the timeline for this rollout in terms of, I guess, do we think that this app will end up, Instagram Lite will end up being available in other places? Because I think it was at the beginning of the story, I'm forgetting now, but didn't you say that it disappeared? Yeah, Instagram Lite vanished from app stores worldwide, and then they were working on an updated version, and then the updated version was aimed at people in India. So is it that it's only available in India right now, or the version that has Reels is only available in India and Instagram Lite is available in other places without Reels?
Yeah, so it's a little bit confusing and also a little bit vague. So it was pulled, you got it right, it was fully pulled from all app stores worldwide last year in May. And then the company started to relaunch Instagram Lite in a couple of target markets late last year. So Instagram Lite has already been re-released in India, in Venezuela, and Morocco. And Facebook said on Wednesday, when it kind of had this press conference to unveil Instagram Lite worldwide, saying that it will be available in Google Play Store in over 170 countries over the next couple months. So that's a little bit vague. Yeah, but they're really, targeting, the undeniable focus is really clearly India.
Gotcha. My last question for you, and it's a pretty big one here, is about Facebook's push into India in general. You talk in your article about Free Basics. If you could explain to our users what Free Basics is, and then the larger concern that comes along with Free Basics, where Facebook is kind of serving as the gateway to the rest of the internet.
Totally. So Free Basics is something that Facebook came up with several years ago, and it's basically like a package. Also for people with really limited bandwidth or very basic phones. And it's a text-only mobile version of Facebook that's packaged along with other like zero or low data versions of news sites and a couple like health and job sites. So it's like a little app and you can see Facebook and all these other sites within it. But there's a couple tiers of what's available in there. And many people have criticized that not that much local information is actually available in it. And it's gotten pretty widespread use in some of its target markets. So by the end of last year, 32 countries in Africa had used Free Basics at one point. And Facebook claims that it helped 100 million people get online. But critics, especially in India, when Free Basics was being rolled out there, say that the company is effectively like acting as a gatekeeper to the broader internet. And it's privileging certain services and information over others with no transparency about why. And so in 2016, digital rights activists in India really successfully argued for Free Basics to be banned completely in India, along with some other zero-rated services. And they said that it violated net neutrality, which is the principle that, all internet traffic should be treated equally by service providers. For example, one of the things that they were doing inside Free Basics is offering this maternal health site by Johnson & Johnson. And the company said, that site helps them collect data that predicts consumer behavior. So critics say that it's also basically capitalized on the situation of users with limited capacity in order to collect data on them and promote Facebook products. And so this is, kind of the backstory of this sort of light version or like lower data version of a Facebook product in India. The market was extremely not receptive to it. So I think it's pretty interesting to see Facebook try and roll out Instagram Lite in this context, especially when there's also been so much appetite for homegrown alternatives to TikTok since the ban. It seems like they're really going to have an uphill battle to try and get the users that they're looking for.